All right, here we are. Did a lot of rebooting. Seemed like that worked the last time, but then again, who knows? I reboot the internet, or Starlink. I reboot the computer before I get going and just see if that, just in case the issue is on my end when we get cut off, just in case, to see if that helps. So I did that last week and we didn't get cut off, but then again, there's times we don't get cut off. I still keep thinking it's from YouTube's end, but whatever. So just so you know, if you're new to my lives, we tend to get cut off here a lot. And so I always have a backup stream ready to go that I call the reboot. And it's linked in the description box down below. So if all of a sudden the whole thing stops, just wait for me to put something in the chat to let you know I'm going to the next stream, or yeah, I'm going to the backup stream. And then give me a minute or two to set it from private to public and then publish it. I have it as ready to go as I can, but I don't want it public because I don't want people going there and waiting and then being in the wrong stream since I'm here. My throat hasn't been great today. It's funny because yesterday it wasn't bad, and it figures today it's not great. But whatever, I'm going to try hard to push through, the issues going on here. So, and I think it's more than just my vocal cords. I think there's something else going on. I'm suspicious. I know what, but no worries. Just, hey, I always appreciate prayers though. So anyway, hello everyone. Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. I got a couple of topics I hope I can get through, plus some Q&A time at the end. And we're going to be starting off talking about soap making. So I did make sure that I linked to my full playlist in the description box. So I haven't done a soap making video in quite a while, but for a while there where I was making soap all the time because I was selling it, I did do a few showing some different recipes, but the basics are always the same in the way I do it. And so the reason I wanted to talk about this today, even with that full playlist and showing you how I do it and all the safety precautions you got to take, et cetera, I wanted to try to cover all the different ideas, or basically not all of them, but a bunch of different ideas, but mostly to encourage people who haven't got into soap making to realize that it's really very simple. If you start going to soap making websites and channels, and they've got all these, they're using like 50 different things in their soap and everything is exactly precise. Precision is somewhat important. I'll get to that. But you don't have to use a ton of different things in your soap. It can be very simple. If you're using a liquid like a homemade lye that you made from your own hardwood ash, all you need is that and fat. That's it. If you're using a dry lye like this, it can be just household drain cleaner as long as it says 100% lye or sodium hydroxide. Here's another one. This one I found to be the best deal. I have a link to this one down below on Amazon because it works out to be $5 a pound, where this for a pound once used to be $3.50 at our local store. It's now up to like $13. So, and this is only a pound, where I can get this for $5 a pound, but you have to buy 5 of them. So at any rate, but so what I was going to say, if you're using that, then you need water and your fat. Now, the type of fat you choose to use is going to be up to you, but there are some things to understand that if you're using an oil, you can make soap just using straight oil, but it takes far longer to set up if you do that, like a lot longer. And like I did a soap trying to use up some hemp seed oil I'd bought and then decided I really didn't like the flavor of it for cooking. So I thought, I'll use it for soap making. And so I didn't add any other kind of fat. I just used the hemp seed oil, and it took forever to set up. I've done the same thing with olive oil forever. But it doesn't make a hard soap. So it's still I mean, it hardens up, but it always stays a little bit softer. And the problem with a softer soap is that you work through it a lot faster. It doesn't last as long as a hard soap. The harder the soap, the longer it's going to last. You're going to get a lot more use out of it. So doing a combination is, if you want to add some kind of oil to it, that's not a harder oil like coconut oil or lard or tallow or, shea butter or something like that, then using a blend is going to be the best. I kind of got sidetracked, so I hope I stayed on track on what I said there. Um, but my favorite, if I'm just trying to keep it super, super simple, is refined coconut oil, because the refined coconut oil is always a little harder and sets up much faster. Water and lye. And always use the same measurements: 20 ounces of fat to 8.5 ounces of water and 3 ounces of lye. If I want to double the recipe and fill something like this, I did put a link to this, then, I have to double it. And then you make one big bar that you got to cut into bars like the next day if you're going to use it that way. And, but you got to do it the next day. You want to do it before it totally hardens. It's still 24 hours later, it's still soft. So here's a soap I made 24 hours ago. It's firm enough I could get it out of the mold, but it's still soft enough that if I wanted to cut this, I could. And so this is green, as you can see. And I'm going to talk more about this later. I was experimenting for the first time with something that I'll talk about in a bit. But I got 2 other batches I just made today, so they're still in the molds. Now, when it comes to the molds, getting silicone molds are the easiest to use, because when you want to, if you're using, I prefer using bar form like this, and then 24 hours later, you just push them out of the mold. It's super easy to get out. Though you can make your own soap mold like this. Let's say all you had was this, like this one here comes with the silicone thing, so you can push it out. But if you had any kind of little box, or you built your own little box, then in that case, all you got to do is put line it with wax paper, parchment paper, something that you can then pull it out so that you can then unwrap it. You might end up with little wrinkle marks at the corners. But if you don't want to buy soap molds, that's always an option. I've seen people do that, or even use like those mini loaf pans, or even just a full size bread loaf pan. But again, you would have to line it with something that you can pull out and unwrap it. So wax paper, parchment paper, something like that. I would say in this case, wax paper would probably be the best. So I'll just give you a quick rundown, since this video about soap making, or this portion, isn't really so much instructions on how to do it, because I already have a lot of videos on that. But it is important to understand that, yes, you should use some safety precautions. Like I wear some gloves, and try to wear, where are they? Goggles. Try to remember to wear goggles. It's just safety precautions. The chances are you're not going to get hit in the eye. But if it does happen, yeah, it's just a safety precaution. Sometimes when you talk about taking the safety precautions, it freaks people out and it gets them afraid to ever even work with lye. But once you make the soap, you don't have to be afraid. You realize it's not really that scary of a thing. 2 of the main important things are just making sure you don't get splashed during the process, or spill some lye on yourself or something, and that you have good ventilation. So I used to make my soap in the kitchen, but I get better ventilation doing it right by the back door on top of my freezer. And I lay a piece of an old box that's been broken down. I lay that down, so I'm protecting my quilt on top of my freezer. And then I make my soap on there, because it's inevitable I'm going to get drippings of soap. And that's something you want to know. So you want to make sure you lay it on, you have something to protect your surface, because that's a good idea. But anyway, you put your if you're doing this size here, I'll show you. Let's see which one. This one I did earlier in the morning, so I can at least pick it up. This is orange vanilla, and I actually used orange peels that I dehydrated up and powdered in there, along with orange and vanilla essential oils. But anyway, so what was I starting to say? Oh, I was starting to say that that recipe, the 20 ounces of fat to 8.5 ounces of water and 3 ounces of lye. You don't mix all that together at once. I'm going to explain that. But that particular recipe fills up, makes 6 bars that you can pile. If you're wanting your bars just flat and level, it'll make it, you can get 7 out of there. But I like to just kind of pile it up, and probably makes the bars closer to being 5 ounces than 4 ounces each. But at any rate, I just prefer that method. I've used this a couple times. It's not my favorite way to do it. Everybody's going to have their own preferences. Some people like to do it in this and then cut it into bars. It's all entirely up to you. There's no one right way. But anyway, so you measure out your lye first, or well, you can measure out your fats first if it's something you got to melt. So if you're doing a hard, like the coconut oil, you're going to want to melt it so that it mixes easily. So I've been adding castor oil to mine now. So I don't, the nice thing about using just coconut oil, if you just want a nice pure white soap, the coconut oil makes a beautiful pure white soap. In the case of just adding castor oil for more of the benefits of the castor oil, and just to use up some of the castor oil I have, because I have a lot, I do 16 ounces of coconut oil to 4 ounces of castor oil. And that I like that. That has a nice balance. But what I do find is any addition of castor oil tends to not get that nice, pure, solid white look to it. It has a little bit more of a gray color, and that's fine if I'm just making it for us. But now this one I showed you, this one here, because I made it shortly before I started it, it still has that really dark look. But you can see the lighter colors where that's the part that's hardening up first. This is lavender, and I actually added some lavender flowers to it from my garden. Um, anyway, gosh, I keep starting to say something and then I get distracted. I distract my own self. Because of the things used in it, these will dry up a nice color. The lavender one will look mostly white ish, but it will have the lavender flower pieces that I put the dried lavender flowers in there and process them up in there as I'm mixing this stuff. So anyway, let me get back. I keep just getting distracted. Too many things I'm trying to talk about. So you put the lye in first, the dry lye, into whatever container you want to mix your soap in. That's where you're going to do all the mixing. Measure that out. That is something I am precise about, are those measurements. 3 ounces of lye, and then I measure out my 8.5 ounces of water, and then I carefully mix that in there. That's where you're going to get the fumes. And this is where you might, if you don't have really good ventilation, you might want to wear something over your face. Okay. Because you don't want to inhale those fumes. It only lasts for a minute or two. As the lye and water are mixing, it's gonna make gases, and you just don't want to breathe that in. And again, that's something that people get all scared, but it's not that hard. I just stand back and stand in good ventilation and don't even bother covering my face. So it's a good idea, but especially if you're in a place that you're not getting enough ventilation. And again, it's recommended to wear some safety goggles. You can get a 3-pack of these. These are dirty, man. You can get a 3-pack of these for a reasonable price. And that way, when you start the actual mixing the fat into the lye water mixture, using a stick blender is the fastest way to do it, but you can do this with a spoon just in case you splash. You definitely don't want to get it in your eyes, but it's a lot of that's going to depend on whether or not you're throwing dried stuff like the flowers. And a stick blender, where you're most likely going to have something possibly splash because it's might catch on a whole flower or something. It doesn't I had it happen to me once. And so keeping some of your homemade or store-bought vinegar on hand in a spray bottle that you can spray on there, or just if you get it on your hands or anything else, just rinse really, really well. Um, it's happened to me, and it's never left any serious sores, just little sting, little burn. You just act quickly. You just the eyes are the scariest part because that's a lot harder. That's going to be, it's a lot more sensitive. That's going to cause a lot more damage. That's why you want to really protect your eyes. So, but yeah, like I said, I always wear gloves as I'm doing this because it's really until this gets at least to this point, you really don't want to be handling even the once it's all blended. So once it starts getting thickening up, once it starts to thicken up, that's usually when I'll add, like if I'm going to add essential oil, I'll throw that in there. And if I'm going to add any herbs, or like I did with the orange vanilla, add some ground up orange peels. And that's just for the nice thing about that is it adds texture, it makes a nice scrubby quality to the soap. You can do the same thing with your oats or any other herbs. I used to make tons of different soaps using, and you'll see that if you go to the playlist. I've got like a rose calendula oatmeal soap and just tons. I've used borage, you can use comfrey, you can use plantain, preferably dried. Another thing I've never tried, but people have asked me about, I just keep forgetting to consider this, is you can make like an herbal tea, strain it out, and have that be your water instead of just plain water that you then add to the lye. You can do that. I've also used certain precious metal infused water to make the soap with and had that be my water. And so that can make a more antibacterial type soap. So yeah, the precious metal that starts with an S. So I've made that in a colloid form and then use that as the water replacement for making the soap. And so that works out pretty good. I do want to say before anyone asks, so I used to make a lot of soaps to sell. I don't do that anymore. Typically, when I make soaps for us, I just keep it super, super simple. But the reason I made a couple of fancier type soaps is because I realized, man, I never have soap on hand anymore that I would want to just give as a gift. And so that's why today I thought, since I've been making soap usually once a year, I'll make a bunch of soap just to make sure we have plenty to get us through the year. And I like doing it this time of year where I can open everything up and have really good ventilation and not freeze to death. So that's why I've been doing some soap lately and thought, well, while I'm at it, let's do a couple of nice ones that I can wrap up and gift to people, if a birthday comes up or something, or I just want to do something nice for someone. So that's what these are for. These are not for us, the lavender and the orange vanilla. And I might, since I'm kind of in a soap making mood right now, I might make some other ones too, like maybe a rose and add some rose petals to that because I've done that. But okay, let me look at my notes. I want to make sure I'm not forgetting anything really important. Oh, one more thing about molds. This mold here I did link to, this particular one. You can get all kinds of round molds, but the reason this one, I was very specific when I went to look for a round mold. I needed the measurement to be exactly what I was looking for. And this I picked for making shave soaps. So like if your husband, Patrick doesn't really shave anymore. So, but back when he was still, at least, he had the goatee, he couldn't have a full beard when he was working for the water department because he couldn't get a good seal on his mask when he's working with all the toxic ingredients that go into cleaning water. So yeah, you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, but instead of using shaving cream, store-bought shaving cream, and who knows what's in that, you can just make whatever soap. It doesn't matter, the blend, as long as you make it in a round form like this. This is the perfect size for fitting into a shave bowl. So you don't have to buy the shave soap. You can just make your own. So that's why I wanted to specifically link to this one. And then you can even get little candy molds. That's what I have these for mostly, is for making cute little soaps. Well, making candies too. But these have got animals on them. I didn't link to these. I can't remember where that is. Little rosettes. I think I got that at our local store. And somebody bought these for me. It's a set. It had a whole bunch of different molds like this. So, you know, you have this pile of little cute soaps that you can give to people. That's what I used to do with the excess. So when I'd fill my bars like this, and I'd have a little excess, and I'd fill a few of these things, and then I used to just give them away. So anyway, yeah, there's so many types. You can just look up silicone molds, and you can find all kinds of molds for anything food related, and those will work too if you want some cute shapes. It doesn't have to specifically be soap molds, because they're all the same thing. It's just if you're looking for, you know, if you're looking for specific, like the 4-ounce bar shape. I like this one here for that. And then, like I said, this one is specifically for food, but I got it because it was exactly the size I wanted, and it fits into the soap, or into the shave bowl perfectly. So now let's talk about, okay, let me look over my notes. So I mentioned fat, some fat ideas. So, you know, coconut oil, hemp seed oil, olive oil, castor oil, shea butter, cocoa butter, mango butter. But here's the thing about the harder fats. The harder they are, like shea butter, cocoa butter, and mango butter, I say go lightly on those, and just know that if you're going to use the harder fats like that, it'll set up even faster. Like you'll stick your stick blender in there, and next thing you know, the thing's turning gelatinous, and you're going to have to scoop it into your soap molds. You won't be able to pour it. Sets up very quickly. And also certain essential oils like clove oil, and I think orange oil as well, will cause it to set up very fast. So you just got to work quickly in that case. Again, the more of the liquid oils like the olive, hemp, and so on that you're using, the longer it will take. So if you want something that takes a longer process for the mixing, you know, you might want to increase the amount of oil to coconut oil. And you can use unrefined coconut oil, but it does, that's a, you know, a good option, especially if you want to keep a little bit of that coconut smell. It just does take longer. I would say it takes twice as long for it to get thick enough to that point where you want to actually pour it into your molds. And let's see. Let me see if I list off if there's any other herbs. Dandelion is another one. Calendula is great. Dandelion and calendula tend to hold their color. Here's something to know, though, that if you want to add certain flowers and stuff because of the color, just know that the lye is going to change the color of quite a few of them. Calendula is one of the few that really holds its color well. And it seems like, if I remember correctly, so does dandelion. I've done dandelion in soaps quite a bit, but I think the dandelion holds. The rose adds some color, but it's just not going to be the same. It's not going to look the same. So, and pansies, somewhat. Sometimes it depends on the pansy and its color. And you can even buy, like if you have an herbal tea blend that you like the smell of it and everything, and it's good, healthy herbs, you can throw those in there too. So just remember, anytime you're adding dried herbs to your soap, is going to give it a very exfoliating type feel to your soap. And I just like it. It looks cool. It adds a nice color, or a nice texture is what I mean. Sometimes nice color too. And let's see, I talked about the liquids. If you don't want to just use plain water. Some other options to add to your soaps could be like coffee grounds, cocoa, if you want like a chocolate soap, just cocoa powder, oats, ground cloves. So I would add, when I would do I used to make orange clove soap quite a bit. And so I'd add both orange and cloves essential oils, but I would also add a little bit of ground cloves to that, and the ground dried orange peels. I thought I brought those in here. I guess I didn't bring the orange peels in here. But so just some ideas. I've done the same thing when I've done like the lime vanilla. I have lime peels that I've dried and powdered up, put those in there. Grapefruit, that's the same thing, especially because lime and grapefruit peels aren't the most tasty thing to use in teas. Well, you can still dry them up, powder them, and use them in your soaps. So another favorite one I used to do was grapefruit. I think it was grapefruit, dandelion, and vanilla. I think, I don't remember. And I've done a rosemary grapefruit, which that turned out pretty good too. So just be creative, and you don't have to follow anybody's specific, even though I show you how I do it. I'm just showing you how I do it and giving you ideas in that video series. But it doesn't have to be exactly that, but you do want the proper balance of fat to lye to water. This is important, especially because if you get a lye heavy soap, it can be rather harsh on the skin if it's too lye heavy. But and you know when you go to use it. But the one thing about lye heavy soaps is those can be used for cleaning. So those can be used for cleaning stains out of clothes. Just rub it in there, and that's going to work better than your standard soap that you would make for yourself. And then there's this whole, oh, well, do you super fat? Do you do this? Basically, I'm like, what do people mean by super fat? I thought maybe it was a specific kind of fat, which I think in a way, yeah, it kind of is, like, especially if you're adding something like shea butter and all that, that tends to cause your soap to set up quickly. But mostly what that means is you're going a little heavier on the fat than, in that balance. So like, let's say I'm still using 8.5 ounces of liquid, water or tea or a colloid, and the 3 ounces of a dry lye, then I'm going to maybe use 21, 22 ounces total of fat. And what's going to happen is you probably are going to end up with a little bit of a softer soap, the more fat that you add to it. So I hate trying to type online, honestly. I get it, Linda. I'm not seeing all the comments. So, anyone remember the song Grandma's Lye Soap? I don't remember that one. I remember, was it Grandma's Feather Bed or Grandpa's? I think Grandma's Feather Bed. I remember that one. So let's see. Okay. And then the set time when you're doing it this way. And honestly, I always get it back. I've heard people say the way I do it is the cold process method. I've had people tell me it's the hot process method. I think it's the cold process method, but I think the hot process is when you're doing it in a slow cooker, which I've never done. People claim that it sets up a lot faster as far as the total set time. This method I'm using, you want to let the soap bars, you press it out of your molds 24 hours later, but you want the soap to cure for 30 days. And what that's going to do is it's going to help that soap last longer. The soap is going to harden, and the longer it sets, it can set for 2 months. It can set, because I've got soap back there that I made last year that we still haven't got to yet, but I want to stay ahead. Well, that soap's going to be nice and hard. So letting it dry, the longer you let it dry, without wrapping it up, the harder the soap's going to get, and the longer it's going to last. You're going to get a lot more use out of that soap. And so this is just the method I've used. I have no interest in using my slow cooker for this. I do it this way. I like the way I do it. But again, if you want to know more about that, then just check out other people's videos on how they like to use a slow cooker to make their soap. To me, I don't like it because one of the things I don't like about it is you got to stand there and mix it for a lot longer period of time. At least if I remember. Yeah, see, that's what I thought, Teresa. But I've had someone laugh at me and say, no, you do the hot process. I'm like, the only heat that's happening is because I need to melt my coconut oil. And the fact that when you add the water, the lye, okay, let me stress this too. Water to lye, not the other way around. So you got the lye in there, then you add the water. Right? Or is it the other way around? Maybe I'm saying it backwards. I've been doing it backwards. It's been, sometimes I get, check that out. Now I'm starting to doubt myself. You just don't want this explosive action. I think it's water. You measure the water first, then you add the lye. I've been doing it backwards. I haven't had any issues though. No issues whatsoever. Because I stand back and I pour it over the lye slowly. Anyway, now let's talk about the colors and why this one is green. So remember a while back when I was talking about mica powders and their uses, mostly like if you want to use them for makeups, but you can use mica powders for, they're more natural and you can use them for coloring whatever you want, candles and soaps. I thought, I've never used my mica powders. So I thought, well, since I'm making this balsam fir, I thought it'd be fun to do that for Patrick. I'm going to try adding some green mica powder. Well, I was a little surprised at how much mica powder I kept having to add it to get even this color. And it's not even super dark. It's kind of a light olive. And that's not even the color, that's the color it looks right now. It might look different, because this is only like, I just made it yesterday. So it should turn more opaque and lighter in color. But I'm like, if you want to and you want it to be fancy, yeah, you can do that. I just was a little surprised at how much mica powder I had to keep adding. It was a little disappointing. I thought I just needed a tiny bit, but I had to keep adding it and keep adding it. So it's just entirely up to you. If you're making them to sell, you want these pretty, like some people will use like the loaf type, and they'll put like one layer of soap here that hasn't been dyed, or maybe that they've added color to here. And then after that sets up enough, they'll have another one that they do. I don't know if it's a few hours later or if they wait until the next day, and then they'll do another layer that's been colored a different color. That's how they get the different colors. And so then when they cut it, they might even do 3 layers. Then when they cut it, you have these different, colors, stripes or whatever in your soap. To me, I'm just not interested in that. It's just, nah. As fast as it takes me, I'm always surprised at how quickly I can make up soap like this. It's so quick, and it's done. So, okay, what did they say? Let's see. When mixing lye with water, always add the lye to the water. Yes. I said it completely backwards, and I've been doing it backwards the last 2 days I've been making soap. And I'm like, it just dawned on me as I'm talking, wait a minute. I've been doing it backwards. I know better. And I say as much in my other soap making videos, but I just had a brain fart. But you know what? Nothing happened. But still, it's better to practice the safer option. Can you add goat's milk? I've never done the goat's milk. I know a lot of people that do, but from what I understand, when they put goat's milk in, they put it in frozen, because when you're adding the liquid to the lye, or the lye to the liquid, excuse me, when you're adding your lye to your liquid, it causes it to heat up really fast. It heats the water. And that's part of the process. It will cool down fairly quickly, but because it can heat up, I can't remember how hot it gets. It's been a long time since I've used like a candy thermometer to check it. I cannot remember how hot it makes it. But if you're just using just straight goat's milk, it can cause it to burn the milk because it gets so hot so fast. So you got to be a little more careful. And that's what I was a little concerned about as far as making a tea and then doing that, is will it damage some of the benefits of the tea because it heats up so hot so quickly, whereas adding the dried herbs into the soap, well, by that point it's cooled down considerably, and I wouldn't worry about it damaging the herbs at that point. But at any rate, let's see. I just bought some herb starts and only bought one of each: lemon balm, oregano. So do I need to buy more of each for making herbal teas and Italian seasoning? Well, you just got to understand that your herbs starts, I mean, they're just starts right now. They will grow. What did you say you got again? Lemon balm, oregano. Those are both perennials. They're going to get bigger every year. They're going to come back every year and get bigger and bigger. It depends on how soon you want a lot. Yeah, because they will, a lemon balm. I've got one massive lemon balm out here and two massive ones out here. And I think it started from just a couple of starts that I had. I can't remember if I had one or two starts. You'll end up with a lot. And the lemon balm goes to seed and makes a lot more plants. I haven't really got, or here, it could just be here. I haven't had my oregano go to seed and make new plants coming up from seed, but it could just be because of my climate. But at any rate, so yeah, forgive me on the lye water thing, saying it backwards. I can't believe I did that because it suddenly just dawned on me, wow, I said that completely backwards. And so it is best water, then add your lye to that. It's going to be a lot safer. And then you stir that in. Okay. Wait until it's fully dissolved. Then you pour in your melted fats and stir that in, and then use your stick blender and all that. But anyway, this isn't all instructions about making soap. It's just to give you some ideas. And you can always go back and watch any of my soap making videos. One of my oldest videos is just showing me make a very simple soap with herbs added to it, just a blend of herbs. No essential oils, no coloring of any kind, nothing fancy, just coconut oil, water, lye, and the herbs. That's it. So, but yeah, you can use lard. It's something I stay away from, but you can use tallow. Just keep in mind, if you're going to use like beef tallow, you want to either render it yourself in such a way that you're getting the beef smell out, if you don't want your soap to smell like a steak. But if you're making it for your husband, he'd probably like that. I don't know, maybe I'd probably like that. I like steak. I like beef. Okay, just keep that in mind. You get the same thing if you use lard. Even store-bought lard can make your because I used to use it for soap making, and then I got away from that. I just stay away from all that kind of stuff now. But even the store-bought white lye would still make the soap smell kind of piggy. So yeah, just some things to keep in mind. I think probably your leaf lard wouldn't do that. But yeah, beef tallow, shea butter is really great. I wouldn't personally use beef tallow because it's really expensive. If you're buying it, it's pretty expensive. I would not use it for soap making, where I can get a big bucket of coconut oil for a pretty good price. A 1 gallon bucket, or you can get it from Azure Standard has the best price on that I've seen on refined coconut oil. But the unrefined, Costco has the best price for the unrefined organic coconut oil. And either one works. Again, the unrefined just takes longer before it, you can get it to the point where you're ready to pour it into your molds. That's it. It's still great. But yeah, it's a lot cheaper than using beef tallow if you have to buy it. But if you have your own cattle and you got all this tallow, there's one way you can use it up. I would prefer to save, like I've bought some beef tallow just to try it that way, but I also like to save the fat whenever I do a beef roast, and it has fat in it. And then that fat, after you eat on it for a night, and I set it in the fridge, and then the fat will float to the top, and then I'll pull that off and just rinse it off and stick it in the freezer. I don't render it down. You can. I just don't bother because I like that beef. I want to keep as much of that beef flavor in there as I can. And then I'll just use that for frying potatoes or something. And so, but you could use that too. In fact, just yesterday, I thought I'd try I had made some homemade barbecue sauce and did some barbecue beef something. Were they ribs? I think they were ribs. I just basically made the barbecue sauce, poured it over the ribs, and then baked it And then, there was a lot of fat on those ribs, and so that fat floated to the top, and it had it and so it was orange instead of just white. So it had some of the barbecue sauce in it, and so I pulled that off and froze that and finally used it yesterday to try something. Basically made potato chips using that. They were really good. It's cut because I dug up some potatoes from my garden, cut them really thin, and then fried them. You gotta get the oil, you gotta get the fat super hot. I mean, really hot, and then you fry them quickly and to make it crispy, and that was really good. I would rather use the beef towel that way. That's just my personal thing because 'cause I'm not into, it is nice to have some fun, nice smelling soaps, I mean, with some fun colors and whatnot, but I'm just not all that concerned about having all these fancy schmancy whatevers. If mostly the coconut oil and the castor oil, that's it now. I did add, whoops, I think to this one. I think I added a little blob of cocoa butter to this one. I made 2 batches, and I can't remember if I added the cocoa butter. I think I added the cocoa butter to both. Just a little bit, maybe about 2 ounces, and it did set up quite quickly. But it was just try it. I had never put cocoa butter in any, just did it for the heck of it. But again, cocoa butter's pretty expensive too. That it's not, to me, it's not worth it to use expensive fats in soaps. They're going to clean. They're still going to clean you. They'll still gonna work. I mean, if it's important to get it as conditioning as possible, because maybe you have really dry skin or whatever, yeah, just play around with your different fats and your different fat measurements. But when I first started, I did find a soap calculator, and it's like, well, I don't want to make that much soap. And so I just kind of basically did the math on this, on just the basic measurements. And that's what I came up with to get the right amount to make just the 6 bars at a time. I like doing it that way instead of having a big massive batch of one kind. And maybe I'm experimenting. And it's like, I don't really like the way that turned out. And, well, I only got 6 bars, not 152. I just threw that number out there because that's how I do it. Can you give us a recipe? I have a video on the barbecue sauce on my main channel. So I don't know how old that one is. I think I've done a couple different videos, but I have one that's newer. So maybe Deb can be nice and go find that. She's always so helpful in that way. I really should select a couple more people to be moderators. There's plenty of people in here I'd trust. I have to, trust a person, but the thing is I don't want to make people moderators and then have them feel like, oh, I got to do all this work. You don't have to. I don't want anybody feel that just because I make them a moderator that I'm going to, you got to come in here and you have to do all that stuff. Like Tyler, he's a moderator. He's been a moderator for years, but he just pops in and says hi. His moderating is adding his sense of humor, but he could do that without having a wrench or not. Let's see. I'm probably missing some important stuff, but I try to come back to the comments later because I don't know how long my voice is going to hold out. So I want to make sure I get through all my points and move on. Let's see. Oh, I do want to throw out some ideas for essential oils. Now, essential oils is what I prefer to use when it comes to adding it to the soap. It does add more expense to the soaps, and it's more expensive than using fragrance oils, but fragrance oils tend to be synthetic. That's why they're cheaper. So I tend to stick with making soaps out of oils with essential oils that are going to be on the cheaper side. Like I don't recall if I've made a soap with frankincense in it. And even the rose absolute oil is kind of more on the expensive side. And I don't really like to do that. But I always tend to lean more to the citrus oils are going to be cheaper. Lavender, you can usually get a pretty good price. Peppermint makes a great soap. Like I know one of my recipes in there is a peppermint oatmeal soap where I add dried peppermint and oatmeal to it, and then a peppermint essential oil. So I try to stick with the cheaper oils, but you can use something like rose, frankincense. Tea tree is another good one. That's not too expensive. Eucalyptus is another not too expensive. Wintergreen, I mentioned the grapefruit. Lime is amazing. I love the smell of lime, and it's not too expensive. Rosemary. What did I write here? Oh, fir balsam. Yeah, that's what I made this one. I added to this one. Not a super cheap one, but I had it. I just wanted to try the oil just for the smell. I love the smell of it. And I don't really have anything else to use it in. So I thought, I'll use it in the soap I make for Patrick. That'll work. Another one would be like cedar that I've done a blend of. I used to do this one quite a bit. The guys tend to like this one a lot. It was a blend of cedar and patchouli or patchouli, however you pronounce it. Everybody pronounces it a little bit different. That makes a really nice smell too. I think in that one, I'd often use borage leaves in that one. So any herb that's good for your skin that you can add to that, or that you just want to see if it's going to add some pretty color to it. Okay, so I think that was it. Now, were there any specific? I get my essential oils either from Azure Standard, whatever brand they've got there, or I buy them from Vitacost, and I get the Now Foods. Now Foods is my favorite for price and quality. I don't care what anyone else says. I've been using them. They're the first essential oil I've ever tried years ago, like a long time ago, before I even heard of all these fancy schmancy MLM brands that people swear are the only kind. No, they're not. No, they're not. The only reason they're that expensive has nothing to do with quality. They're that expensive because you're paying the middleman, right? You're paying all the uplines. They're multi-level marketing, which is basically a pyramid scheme, even though they try to deny it. And so you're paying all these uplines. That's why they're expensive. It's not because they're high quality. You're going to get that with any multi-level marketing company. So Now Foods has been around far longer than either of the two MLM brands, and their quality and they can sell them for a lot less because they're one of the first ones, and they've got a bigger company. They can buy stuff in bulk, and so they can pass the savings on to their customers. So, but I've tried other brands just for the heck of it that weren't too bad in price that Azure Standard sells, and I find them comparable. I've found Now Foods to be comparable all the way across the board to any other brand I've tried. And I have tried one of the two multi-level marketing before I understood how all that worked. I'm like, this is not worth the price. I compared them side by side with Now Foods. But anyway, Vitacost or Amazon are two of the places I'll get. I try to usually Vitacost because Vitacost tends to have better sales and better deals on their essential oils, the Now Foods. And Vitacost is a great place. I don't have any kind of affiliate with them really. I've tried, but I never could get it to work. I tried to set up an affiliate. It never would work, but whatever. It's still a great place to buy health related stuff. I did MLM and telemarketing back to back when I was a teenager. It took me less than 6 months to quit each. And you know why? It's really sad the way they suck people in. I've talked about this before. They suck people in, especially people like stay-at-home moms, military moms, people in the Mormon church tend to be victims to this quite a bit, which is sad. They kind of prey on people, and they suck them in because they know that people are wanting to do a side hustle to help, be able to still do their stay-at-home mom job and then make money on the side. But what happens is they end up putting in so much money and so much time and never can really get ahead and end up losing money. It ends up costing them money and costing them the time they could be pouring back into their family. It's really sad. And eventually at some point they realize most people will realize that this isn't working. I got to get off this. And it's more the people who become the Huns, as they call them, and I think they spell it HUN in that case. The ones that are the high ranking, they're the ones that got into the company first. They're the only ones that are really making money, but they convince everybody else. And the reason they do that is because the more downlines they have, the more people they have underneath them, the more money they make. But if you're on the bottom rung, you're not going to make anything. In fact, you're going to pay more. You're not going to make any money. So Avon and Tupperware, I have done both, and it cost me more than I made. And I didn't even know it wasn't even until like a year or two ago I realized that Avon was a multi-level marketing. I never knew that. I didn't even know what multi-level marketing companies were until a few years ago in the first place. Then I started putting pieces together. And the more I've learned, I'm just like, wow. And my grandparents, they were Mormons. And they were into all of those, like Shackley. What's the one that starts with an A? One of the most common ones you hear. I think they were in that. Watkins was another one. They were in several of them. Amway. So I think they were in Amway. I know they did Shackley and they did Watkins. So and I think maybe they were in Amway, and they never got anywhere with that. It's really a shame the way they take advantage of people. Really a shame. I've had a Kirby salesman come around here. Kirby's another one. They might have great vacuum cleaners. I don't know. I've heard they're good. But it was before I even had kids, and I already had a vacuum cleaner I really liked. And this guy was so rude to me. Never seen him before in our little small town. And he wouldn't leave. Thankfully, I didn't let him into my house. You'd never let those people in your house, ever. If you let them in their house, your house will be there for hours unless you call the police. No, this guy was rude. He basically called me a moron because I wasn't interested in his stupid vacuum cleaner because I was happy with what I had. But I wouldn't let him in the house because my husband wasn't home. I said, sorry, you're not coming in. No, sorry. So don't ever let those people in your home. Not a good thing. I've heard lots of horror stories. I think I told you guys before, I follow Hannah Alonso on YouTube, and she does just like I do, like with the natural remedy testimonies and the preparedness testimonies where I share other people's stories. She does the same thing with multi-level marketing horror stories. And it's people from both sides, and it's really interesting. Really, really interesting. And sad the way they take, like somebody mentioned in here, how they take advantage of handicapped people. Or, if they find out somebody has cancer, they're immediately, oh, well, you can heal yourself with this, that. And they're taking advantage of somebody's bad situation to sell product. It's rather disgusting. Anyway, and a lot of times they don't even see it because they've been so sucked in and brainwashed. A lot of these are almost like cults. It's really sad. Not going to say they all are, but the behavior that happens within these things when people get sucked in are very much like that. And then when someone decides, hey, this isn't working for me, I'm not making money, I'm losing money, and their so-called friends that sucked them in the first place will dump them like old garbage. That's very much cult-like behavior. Anyway, I didn't mean to get on that topic. So let's go on to topic number 2. Dos. Due. Or Dieu. Adieu toi. So the next topic is repurposing old clothes. Now, I've talked about recycling fabrics and stuff before, but I thought it would be kind of nice to do another live, but also then work it into a standalone video on repurposing old clothes and have it all together, because I have a playlist on upcycling, recycling, and frugality, which I included in the description box, where I broke down different things like how I recycle old t-shirts, how I recycle jeans or upcycle, how I upcycle plastic grocery bags, or what are some other fabrics, old sheets, and so on, flannel. But I thought about doing this a little bit different, where I can let's just talk about all the things you can make from all the different recycled old clothes in particular, but sheets fall into that too. So whether it be flannel shirts, t-shirts, jeans, skirts, especially anything that's cotton of any kind, or linen. So many ways that you can take stuff that you don't wear anymore, maybe it's got holes in it, and you can recycle them, repurpose them into other things. And I did go to Instagram. I only did this on Instagram and asked people to see if anybody would have some new, fresh ideas for me. And there was only one in there that was different than something I had not done. And I'll get to that one last. But I'll read off just a lot of the things I've done. So using recycled fabrics, whether it be old jeans, sheets, socks, shirts, especially flannel shirts. I've used those to make quilts. I mean, that's the great thing about quilts, is you can use just about anything in a quilt. But yes, I've used old sock tops, like the bottom of the sock wears out, but you got this nice wool sock top, and I've made a quilt out of that. Jeans are my favorite thing to use for making a good heavy quilt. Sometimes I like to combine that with a cool flannel sheet, whether it be new or used, that I cut up, because a lot of times it's cheaper to buy the fabric as a sheet than it is to buy the fabric by the yard. But yeah, you can make a nice, heavy, warm quilt. It's not for the sake of being fancy necessarily, just something warm. And just do squares or rectangles. That's my favorite way to do it. But I've heard of people doing this too with like t-shirts that had like different designs on them. Like, especially like, I remember somebody sharing with me how they took all their kids' old sports t-shirts, all through the years, and then made a quilt out of those. You just got to understand, stretchy-ish material is a little more difficult to work with, but it's a cool idea. So, and then skirts, I have one patchwork skirt that I have that's entirely from garage sale fine fabrics, that were sheets, pillowcases, a scarf, curtains. And so those weren't all recycled clothing, but you can do the same thing, recycle old jeans, old flannel shirts, and you can cut your squares or your rectangles or whatever shape you want, and you can make your patchwork skirts out of stuff. So you're taking your old clothes and you're turning it into a different article of clothing. Purses, I forgot to write that down. I've used old jeans and flannels to make my own purses. I've sold a few, but it wasn't something I decided I wanted to do on a regular basis. Just for myself mostly. Dog toys. So what I've done is taken old socks and then took scraps of material and shoved it inside the sock and then tied it off. So you can even like take some old, like some of your old clothing that's just totally tattered, cut it up into little pieces, shove it in a sock, tie off the end. You got a dog toy. And then another idea is like taking strips of old denim, braiding it together to make, like the kind of dog toy that they want to do, like the tug of war thing with. Excuse me. That's going to be a lot more sturdy than some things. Let's see. Pot holders. Make pot holders of all kinds out of any fabric. Well, I say any fabric, but it's always best to use a natural fabric like cotton, something that's not going to melt. If you set something hot on it, jeans would be excellent because they're heavy. But I made just to try it one time, I took a couple of Patrick's old work t-shirts, cut it into strips, and then crocheted a pot holder. It ended up being a really, really thick pot holder, but it works. It's great for if you got something that you want a really thick, heavy duty pot holder. It's perfect for that. I wouldn't do it again because took me a long time just to crochet it because it was so thick, but it was something fun to try. Yeah, just don't mix wool and linen. Yeah, I still believe though that the mixing of the woolen and linen is specifically within a single garment. So mixing the fibers together, because that has been done. I don't think it means you can't wear woolen and linen together. When you consider, if I remember correctly, the priests, they wore mostly linen, but wasn't there something about their garments that was wool? But yeah, scripture's pretty clear, especially if you're reading it within the King James. In the two places it's mentioned, it says woolen and linen. Some people that think that applies to all, you know, polyester and cotton, though it's best to try to stay away from the unnatural fabrics as much as possible because they're just not healthy for you. But no, anyway, let's see. Moving on. So pot holders, aprons. I've taken old, I know I keep saying clothes, but like I've had a lady make me a couple of aprons out of some old jeans that they're really cute aprons. And then I've made aprons out of old sheets. And let's see, shop rags is probably the number one way we use old t-shirts is shop rag. I call them shop rags, but we have them all over. We just call them t-shirt rags. And I just cut the sleeves off and cut them in the best I can. I don't care if they're perfectly square or rectangle. And just those get used every day. Every day they get used as hankies. They get used for cleaning up messes, like when a grandbaby spills something or I spill something. I mean, and I have them in various places, so they're handy. Patrick uses some in his shop, shop rags. But any fabric that's going to be absorbent, you can, you got any old clothes that good cotton, flannel's a good absorbent fabric. Shop rags, especially if it's good for nothing else. If it's really in good condition fabric and it's like cotton or linen, you can make some nice table napkins. You can also make feminine napkins, especially with flannel or diapers or cloth wipes for the bathroom. Flannel is really good for that. Some people will use old t-shirts for those things too. Let's see, bandages and slings. So another thing that I've used old t-shirts for, obviously they're clean in this case, if you're going to use it to wrap something like a bandage, or I've made a sling for myself before when I had a really bad sprain on my wrist. I made a sling to keep it was a bad sprain. I was so surprised something didn't break in there because I heard something snap when it happened. And but no, it was like a tendon or something that I tore. It was bad. It hurt so bad. But I just took a couple of t-shirt rags and tied them together and made myself my own sling. And it was cheap. Oh, I did that. Also when my youngest son was he was pretty young, and him and his cousin, we were camping and they were out behind the trailer playing with an axe. Just about cut off his finger. He had a pretty deep cut because he had his finger. He was sticking his hand to move something out of the way, and Jordan came down with an axe, not really realizing that Justin's hand was there, and just came down. And I thought I heard somebody cry. By the time I got back there, nobody was crying. It was like, "What's going on?" "Oh, it's fine. It's fine." And then he shows me his finger, and I'm like, and I pulled it open. I swear I saw bone. I swear I saw a bone. I don't get queasy very easy, but I made it right. But that did kind of make my stomach turn because it was just like, oh wow, we're camping, and this is worse than I thought. Had some Neosporin in the trailer, put that on there, wrapped it with some t-shirt rags. We had t-shirt rags, and then also made a sling for him too, so he wouldn't use that hand. Because I'm like, it's not going to do any good to run him to emergency because they're not going to put stitches in that finger. All they're going to do is, I know this from experience, all they're going to do is put a bandage on it. And then it's not going to be worth the trip because it would have been an hour either way to go to a hospital. And They're not gonna stitch up a little finger like that with a cut. They're just gonna bandage it. They're gonna put Neosporin on it. They're gonna bandage it. And I was like, I can do that here. That was the same weekend. I also put a nail through my foot. I was like, boy, this is a fun camping trip. So yeah, same thing. And no, I didn't run and get a tetanus shot either. At that point, it's too late anyway. And it's not going to do anything for you. People don't understand how tetanus vaccines work. They're pointless. I'll just say that. They're pointless. What prevents tetanus is a good, thorough cleaning, especially with hydrogen peroxide. That's what's going to prevent tetanus. And people who try to tell you that, well, if you look at when the tetanus shot was introduced, the cases of tetanus went down. Well, you know what also was introduced at that time? It was the flushing out of the wounds. That's what prevents it. Because you get a shot and they say, oh, you got to get one every 5 years, 10 years. No, the shot's not going to prevent you from getting tetanus, whether you have it, especially if you have it after the fact. It's not going to prevent it. Anyway, I know because I made sure to research this stuff really good. Especially when Patrick cut his head really bad at work when he was working for the Park Service. He got a pretty bad cut. And it's like, nope. Total waste of money and time. Okay, so anyway, some other things. Oh, gift bags. So nice shirts, skirts, I said shirts, sheets, jeans. You can make gift bags so easily. Just take a couple of rectangles and stitch them together, and then you can make like a casing. In fact, I have a video somewhere. It might be in that playlist where I show making a gift bag out of a cute floral sheet, and then just make a casing so you can put a pretty drawstring through there if you want. A cheap gift bag that's reusable. You can even wash it and reuse it. You can't do that with the paper gift bags. You might be able to reuse the paper bags if you don't destroy it. But if they get dirty, you can't just wash them and reuse them. But you can do that with a cloth gift bag. Of course, it's a gift bag given to the person. They get to do whatever they want with that bag when they're done with it. Using it as a gift. Let's see. One time, curtains from sheets. I've taken old sheets to make curtains many times. I've done that for when we had that custom conversion van and we used to camp inside it sometimes. And I made curtains that could go behind the front seats, so because that was the only window that didn't have blinds on it. So we had that privacy. I've made curtains for bedroom windows and kitchen windows and whatnot of sheets. I have, you could use just about any old fabric you want. You could even make patchwork sheets or quilts for your windows, the window quilts to get you through winter, using some of those recycled fabrics from your clothing or your sheets or your blankets or whatever. Rice packs, that's another one, or bean or corn. I still like rice better, but the kind where you use it to heat it up to put it on sore muscles, sore neck, sore back, whatever. So old socks are the easiest because you just pour your rice into the sock and tie it tightly. And then whenever you need to use it, because you got sore muscles or a sore joint or a sprained whatever, you just heat it. This is where a microwave definitely is handy, because a microwave does a much better job. For those who are worried about eating microwave food, this isn't a food purpose. It's for heating that up. Because I've tried many